Officer, yes, there's a kid in first class who doesn't belong here. The woman's voice cut sharp through the cabin, her phone pressed to her ear like a weapon. The boy in question, 14, hoodie folded neatly in his lap, sneakers spotless, stared straight ahead. His name was Malik Johnson, and this was his first time flying alone. Row 2A, first class. Boarding pass tucked tight in his pocket, proof of a birthday gift from his grandmother. Passengers shifted uneasily. Some smirked, others filmed. The attendant hovered nearby, expression caught between deference and discomfort. Malik's throat tightened, but he didn't move. His mother's words echoed in his head, "Never shrink for arrogance. You belong wherever you paid to be." The woman raised her voice deliberately, loud enough for the whole cabin. "Yes, a kid alone. He clearly snuck up here." She shot Malik a look dripping with contempt. "Probably stole the ticket." Gasps flickered through the rows. A businessman muttered, "Free entertainment before takeoff." A teenager angled her phone, recording every second. Malik's hand clenched the armrest, knuckles whitening. His pulse thundered, but his body stayed still. To move now would be to admit doubt. To sit still was defiance. The captain arrived, summoned by whispers. His frown deepened when his eyes fell on Malik. "Son, maybe you'd be more comfortable in coach." "No." Malik's voice came out small but steady. "This is my seat." The woman scoffed, triumphant. "You see? Disrespectful already. Officers will sort it out when they board." A ripple of unease swept through the passengers. Some shook their heads. Others smirked. Phones tilted higher, recording a drama unfolding like theater. The attendant shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Malik inhaled slowly, then pulled out his phone. The screen lit up, a crest glowing at the center. Johnson Holdings, 12% airline shareholder. His grandmother had insisted he save the number. "If they ever make you small," she'd told him, "remind them who you are." He whispered to himself, 7 minutes, 7 minutes, until the arrogance across from him collided with authority larger than stripes, louder than announcements. 7 minutes, until the police she called met the board he called. The captain frowned. "Put that away, son. You're making this harder than it needs to be." Malik's thumb hovered over the contact icon. His voice carried just enough to be heard. "You already made it harder. I'm just making it right." The woman's eyes narrowed. "You think that phone will save you?" Malik finally looked at her, calm as stone. "Not save. Correct." Gasps rippled again. Phones caught the moment. A child who looked too small for his seat had just spoken like a judge. Mic drop beat. Malik pressed the call button. The line began to ring. Malik Johnson had never flown alone before. At 14, his world had mostly stretched from school hallways to neighborhood courts, with the occasional family road trip threading it wider. But this trip was different. His grandmother had saved for months, determined to give him a birthday gift he would never forget, a first-class ticket to New York, where his uncle would meet him at the gate. It wasn't just a seat, it was a statement. His grandmother's words echoed as she pressed the boarding pass into his palm that morning. "Your name's on it. That makes it yours. Don't let anyone tell you different." But some people didn't see a boy with a ticket. They saw a boy they thought should be smaller, quieter, invisible. And when Malik settled into 2A, neat as a pin, those eyes sharpened. To them, the sight of a black kid in first class was an error to be corrected, a problem to be removed. The woman across the aisle, expensive pearls, a voice honed to command attention, decided to play judge and jury. Her phone call wasn't just arrogance, it was indictment. And the captain's quick glance, the attendant's hesitation, the smirks of a few passengers all pressed down like gravity. But Malik had something they didn't know, something his grandmother had insisted he carry: a direct line, not to customer service, but to the boardroom. 7 minutes was all it would take to shift the balance of power. 7 minutes for calm to outlast arrogance. This flight wasn't just a trip anymore. It was a crucible. A boy in 2A was about to remind an entire airline that belonging isn't granted, it's claimed. Countdown. 7 minutes until correction. The cabin wasn't quiet anymore. It was humming, low and sharp, like wires pulled too tight. Every passenger leaned toward row 2, eyes flicking between Malik and the woman still clutching her phone like a weapon. "Don't make me repeat myself," she said, snapping the words at the attendant. "He doesn't belong here. Call someone now." The attendant's cheeks flushed. She looked down at Malik's boarding pass on the tray. The black letters, First Class 2A, were undeniable. But the woman's voice carried authority, and authority made hesitation bloom like cracks in glass. "Ma'am," the attendant said carefully, "his pass, fake." The woman cut in, "Or stolen. You really think a kid like that paid for this seat?" A hiss swept the cabin. Someone muttered, "Unbelievable." Another chuckled, "Best show before takeoff." Malik's stomach twisted, but he forced his face still. His mother had told him once, "When arrogance tries to shrink you, don't move. Let it shrink itself." The captain appeared again, tall and crisp, irritation in every line of his body. He didn't look at the woman. He looked straight at Malik. "Son, maybe you'd be more comfortable in coach." Gasps. Someone whispered. He didn't even ask her to move. Malik's voice trembled, but held. "This is my seat." The woman laughed, sharp. "See? Disrespectful already. I told you, police will deal with him." The captain's jaw tightened. "We can't delay the flight for this nonsense. Cooperate or we'll have to remove you." Phones tilted higher, dozens of lenses capturing every second. Malik's hand brushed his pocket where his grandmother's words still lived, folded on paper. "Your seat is yours. Don't give it away." He straightened, small shoulders squaring. "I won't move." A ripple of sound filled the cabin, some groans, some applause, some whispers of support. The woman leaned back smugly. "Then enjoy your little rebellion. The officers are on their way." Malik's phone rested on his thigh, glowing faintly with the crest of Johnson Holdings. His thumb hovered. He whispered, 6 minutes. Mic drop beat. The businessman in 3C muttered to his phone. Kid's about to fight the whole airline without leaving his seat. The tension climbed higher, buzzing like an overloaded wire. Footsteps echoed down the jet bridge. 2 security officers boarding. Their uniforms crisp, their faces unreadable. The cabin stilled, silence collapsing over whispers. The woman sat up straighter, victorious. "Finally, officers, remove him. He doesn't belong here." Gasps rippled. Malik sat frozen, his heart thudding against his ribs, but his face stayed calm. The taller officer crouched slightly, lowering his voice. "Son, what's your name?" "Malik Johnson." "Ticket?" Malik handed over the boarding pass, palms damp but steady. The officer scanned it. "First class. Seat 2A. Verified." The officer's brow furrowed. "This checks out." The woman snapped. "He must have stolen it." The officer looked at Malik again, then back at the boarding pass. "No, ma'am. This is legitimate." Murmurs broke out. A man whispered, "She's digging her own grave." The teenager's live stream comments exploded. "It's real," she lied. "Keep filming." The captain cut in sharply. "I gave an order. He's disrupting the flight. Remove him." Gasps again. The officer hesitated. "But the pass? Remove him." The captain barked. Phones tilted higher. Passengers muttered angrily. "This is discrimination. He's got proof right there." Malik exhaled slowly. His thumb tapped his phone. The crest brightened. The officer frowned. "What's that?" "Correction," Malik said softly. The woman rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. He's bluffing. Just a kid with a toy phone." Malik tapped again. The screen flashed. Direct line, airline boardroom. Gasps filled the cabin. The officer blinked. "What? What is this?" The teenager whispered. "He's calling the board." "Oh my God." Malik whispered, more to himself than to anyone else. 5 minutes. The captain's face reddened. "Put that away. You think you can override me?" Malik lifted his chin. "Not override. Remind." Mic drop beat. He pressed dial. The line began to ring. The line clicked. A calm voice filled the cabin, audible on speaker. "Board relations. This is Director Hayes." Every head turned. Phones filmed. Malik's voice was steady now. "This is Malik Johnson, shareholder through Johnson Holdings. I'm on Flight 417, Seat 2A. I've been told to move despite my valid pass. Correction is required." Gasps roared through the rows. Someone clapped once, Sharply, the woman sputtered. Shareholder? He's lying. Director Hayes's voice cut clean. Confirmed. Johnson Holdings holds 12% stake in this airline. Young Mr. Johnson has full shareholder privileges. Who challenged him? Dozens of eyes swiveled to the woman, cameras locked on her face. She stammered, I just thought. And the captain? Hayes pressed. Passengers murmured, heads turning. The captain's jaw tightened, sweat beading. Director Hayes's tone sharpened. This aircraft is frozen until Mr. Johnson confirms satisfaction. No departure authorization granted. The cabin exploded. Cheers, gasps, disbelief. The teenager cried out. He froze the whole flight. A kid froze the airline. The woman's face drained. Her phone slipped in her hand. I didn't know. Malik's gaze was calm, steady. That's the problem. You didn't want to know. Passengers clapped, some rising to applaud. The officers stepped back, stunned. The captain tried once more, desperate. You can't ground us. Correction, Hayes said firmly. We can, and we did. Malik set his phone down on the tray, eyes on the woman. 7 minutes. I told you. Phones caught the moment, immortalizing it. A boy in a hoodie, calm as stone, had silenced arrogance with nothing but truth. Mic drop beat. The intercom crackled. Flight 417, operations hold confirmed. Await shareholder clearance. The cabin was electric. Every screen pointed toward row 2, capturing the boy in a hoodie who had just frozen an aircraft with a phone call. Director Hayes's voice carried steady over speaker. Mr. Johnson, we've confirmed your shareholder status. Thank you for notifying us. Who initiated the challenge against your seating? Dozens of eyes swiveled to the woman in pearls. She sat stiff, clutching her phone like a lifeline. Her lips trembled. I was just concerned about security. Anyone could have. Hayes's tone sharpened. You accused a shareholder of fraud, theft, and trespassing. Publicly, in violation of passenger conduct policies. Gasps broke out. The teenager's live-stream comments scrolled too fast. She's finished. Humiliation live. Respect the kid. The woman's face flushed scarlet. I didn't know who he was. Malik's voice was quiet but clear. You didn't need to know. You just needed to respect. Applause burst from a few rows. Phones shook in people's hands as they recorded. Hayes continued. Ma'am, you will be removed from this flight immediately. Security, escort her. Her jaw dropped. What? You can't. Correction, Hayes interrupted. We can. And we will. The officers stepped forward. She scrambled for dignity, words spilling. I was trying to protect order. This isn't fair. Amidst the rising whispers, Malik tilted his head slightly. Fairness wasn't your concern when you tried to move me. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, the entire cabin saw not authority but desperation. As the officers lifted her bag from the overhead, passengers clapped, some even cheering. The teenager whispered into her phone. She's being kicked off right now. Live. The woman stumbled down the aisle, humiliated, her pearls trembling at her throat. Phones followed her until the jet bridge swallowed her. Mic drop beat. Hayes's voice returned. Mr. Johnson, disruptive passenger removed. Awaiting your decision on next step. The cabin was buzzing like a hive now. Energy whipping through every row, but the captain's face remained stone. His jaw set tight. He barked into his mic. Ops, can't override my command. This is my aircraft. Hayes's voice came sharp as steel. Correction, Captain. This is a shareholder-governed airline. You defied verification, dismissed a valid boarding pass, and attempted unlawful removal. You are suspended, effective immediately. The cabin gasped. Cheers scattered through the rows. Someone shouted, yes. The captain sputtered. You can't strip me mid-flight. Ops control interrupted. Tone firm. Your license access is disabled. The first officer now holds command. Stand down. Applause thundered. The teenager wept into her phone. The captain just got fired. Mid-flight. A kid did this. The captain's face burned crimson as passengers jeered openly. One man muttered, that's what arrogance gets you. Malik sat still, Shoulders squared, his voice calm. Authority without accountability is turbulence. The captain glared. You think you're in charge? No, Malik said evenly. Correction is. Security approached, guiding the captain down the aisle. Phones tracked his walk of shame, every flash sealing his downfall. The door closed behind him, and the cabin seemed to exhale. The first officer stepped forward, voice steady but awed. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll be your captain tonight. Thank you for your patience. Applause surged again, louder this time, passengers on their feet clapping. Malik's eyes lowered, not in triumph, but in gravity. Mic drop beat. Hayes's voice returned. Miss Johnson, the cabin awaits your clearance. The airline stands corrected. The roar of applause softened into silence as Malik lifted his phone again. His thumb hovered, his face calm. Director Hayes, he said clearly, before this flight departs, I want assurance. Not just for me, for every passenger who's been made to feel small when they belonged. The cabin hushed, reverent. Hayes replied, understood, state your terms. Malik straightened in his seat. The coal directive you enacted fleet-wide last quarter. Apply it here, independent oversight on every discrimination report. Captains suspended for bias removals. Dignity as policy, not suggestion. Passengers erupted in applause. Some cried openly. The teenager whispered, he's rewriting the rules right here. Hayes's voice was solemn. Terms accepted. The directive will be reaffirmed immediately. All crew are receiving updates now. Gasps. Cheers. The cabin vibrated with history. A mother in 5C leaned over to her daughter. See him? That's strength. Calm. Correct. The businessman who had smirked earlier lowered his head, shame burning. The teenager's comments scrolled. This is history. Respect in the sky. Malik for C. Malik placed his phone down gently. Thank you. Hayes concluded. Flight 417, ground hold lifted. Proceed at Mr. Johnson's clearance. The first officer's voice rang through the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, we're clear for departure. Tonight we fly corrected. The cabin erupted in applause one last time, passengers clapping until their palms stung. Malik exhaled slowly, the weight easing from his chest. His grandmother's words echoed, never shrink. You belong. The engines rumbled, steady and strong. The plane rolled forward, not just into the sky, but into a new precedent. Final mic drop beat of the twist. Malik whispered, almost to himself, 7 minutes. That's all it took. The jet bridge doors hadn't even cooled behind her when the cameras caught her. The woman in pearls, once composed, sharp, unshakable, now walked stiffly, her bag clutched too tight, her eyes wide with humiliation. Reporters swarmed, microphones like spears. Ma'am, why did you call the police on a 14-year-old? Do you regret your actions? What do you say to the millions who've seen the video? Her face flushed scarlet under the flashing lights. I didn't know, she stammered. He looked out of place. I thought, you thought wrong. Someone shouted from the crowd. The jeer was caught on a dozen live streams, replayed endlessly by morning. Inside the terminal, screens blared her image alongside Malik's. The headlines, merciless passenger calls cops on kid shareholder, public demands accountability. Clips played on repeat, her voice accusing, Malik's calm correction, her removal down the aisle. The world wasn't just watching, it was judging. By the time she reached her car, her name was trending for all the wrong reasons. Companies quietly severed ties. Clubs rescinded memberships. The community that once applauded her social standing now whispered in disdain. On board Flight 417, passengers refreshed their phones, updates rolling in. A mother murmured to her son, she wanted him moved. Now she's the one who'll never move freely again. Malik sat still, but his eyes were steady. Correction wasn't revenge, it was balance. A teenager scrolled her stream, grinning. Comments say she lost her job already. Another passenger muttered, good, actions have consequences. As the cabin settled into silence, Malik whispered more to himself than anyone else. She wanted me small, instead she shrank herself. Mic drop beat. The intercom pinged. Passenger permanently banned from airline operations. Order corrected. Captain Rand sat in the sterile glow of the operations office, cap discarded on the table, his jaw clenched so tightly it hurt. For 22 years, he had carried wings on his chest. Tonight, those wings felt like anchors. Across from him, HR officials watched him passively as footage rolled on the screen. Rand's voice barking, "Remove him, we don't have time for this." The replay was damning. "Captain," the HR director said coldly, "you attempted to eject a verified shareholder passenger. You dismissed valid identification. You escalated bias. All in front of cameras." Rand's fists clenched. "I was keeping order." "No," the director shot back. "You were feeding arrogance." The union rep shook his head. "We can't shield you from this. The cold directive requires accountability, and with that video, you're finished." The click of the badge unclipping from his uniform was deafening. The silence after, even worse. "Effective immediately," the HR officer intoned. "Your license is suspended. You are relieved of all cockpit duty. You will not return to active service, pending investigation." Rand's shoulders sagged. His career, everything he had built, crumbled in that single sentence. Outside the office, cameras waited. Reporters shouted, "Captain Rand, how does it feel to be grounded by a child shareholder?" His face burned under the flashes. The humiliation was inescapable. By morning, headlines would declare his downfall. "Captain removed mid-flight accountability in the sky." Back on the plane, passengers scrolled in satisfaction. "They fired the captain," someone whispered. Another chuckled. "About time." Malik adjusted in his seat, expression calm. Authority without respect isn't authority, it's noise. Mic drop beat on the tarmac. Rand walked into the night, wings stripped, career in ruins, not by weather but by arrogance. By sunrise, the airline was unrecognizable. Screens in airports worldwide blazed the same headline: "The Johnson Directive enacted, respect is mandatory." Training centers buzzed as crew received emergency updates. Pilots read scripts twice. Attendants whispered rehearsals. Independent oversight teams were deployed fleet-wide. The message was clear. Arrogance had no altitude left. At a press conference, the CEO of the airline stood beside Malik, microphones flashing. The man's tone was stiff, but clear. "Effective immediately, the Johnson Directive requires all passengers be treated with dignity. Bias-based removals trigger immediate suspension. First class is not a privilege, it is a purchase." Reporters shouted questions. "Did you know he was a shareholder? What precedent does this set?" Malik adjusted the mic, voice calm. "This isn't about power, it's about correction. If respect isn't built into policy, then arrogance will always try to climb." Tonight, we grounded arrogance. The room erupted in applause. Hashtags trended instantly. Johnson Directive, respect takes flight. 7 minutes. In schools, teachers replayed the clip. Kids sat straighter in their chairs. "He's my age," one whispered, and he froze an airline. At airports, parents pointed at departure boards. "See, that's his name up there. That's our future too." On Flight 417, as the engines finally hummed for takeoff, passengers smiled across aisles. A businessman leaned toward Malik. "Kid, you changed everything tonight." Malik shook his head gently. "Not everything, just the direction." The engines roared. The plane lifted. The cabin applauded one final time, clapping not for altitude, but for correction. Final mic drop beat of the resolution. As clouds parted, Malik whispered into the hum, "Respect is the runway. Without it, nothing flies." When Flight 417 finally touched down, the applause didn't stop. It rolled through the cabin like waves against the shore. Passengers who had once sat silent now leaned across aisles, shaking Malik's hand, whispering thank yous. Some snapped photos, others simply clasped his shoulder with reverence. The teenager in 3C wiped tears as her live stream ticked past 10 million views. "This is history," she whispered to her camera. A 14-year-old froze an airline. He didn't yell, he didn't fight, he just sat and corrected. A mother in row 5 hugged her son tightly. "Do you see him? That's strength. Quiet strength. Don't you ever forget that. The boy nodded, eyes wide, his world expanded. Malik walked down the jet bridge, phone tucked away, boarding pass still folded in his pocket. The hum of the terminal hit like thunder. Reporters, cameras, flashes, but his mind wasn't on headlines. It was on his grandmother's words. Never shrink. Your seat is yours. Outside, his uncle waited, arms open. You did it, Malik, his voice cracked. You reminded them who you are. Malik hugged him tight, but said nothing. The weight of the moment pressed down, heavy, but not crushing. It was the weight of dignity reclaimed. By the time they reached the car, his phone buzzed with messages. Friends, family, strangers, millions of them. Some wrote thanks. Others wrote stories of times they'd been made to feel small. All of them ended the same. You gave me courage. Back on the plane, passengers refreshed their feeds. The trending headline was everywhere. The Johnson Directive, respect is now law in the sky. Mic drop beat. Malik sat quietly in the back seat of his uncle's car, watching planes lift into the night. It wasn't just my seat, he murmured. It was everyone. The next morning, airports buzzed with a new kind of energy. Screens above gates replayed the clip endlessly. Malik's steady refusal, the woman's collapse, the captain's downfall. Travelers stopped mid-stride to watch. Some clapped, some wept, others whispered. Finally, schools across the country played the video in classrooms. Teachers pointed at the projection. Look at him. 14. Calm. Firm. That's leadership. Kids who had never imagined themselves in first class saw a reflection and whispered, that could be me. Scholarship applications flooded in for the newly announced First Class Looks Like You program. Essays poured from every corner. I've been told I don't belong. But Malik showed me I do. In church pulpits, pastors preached sermons about dignity in the sky. Respect takes flight when arrogance is grounded. One intoned, his congregation clapping in unison. Boardrooms shifted too. Competing airlines scrambled to enact their own directive. Executives whispered that Malik had done what decades of policy could not. He had forced respect into the cockpit. On social media, tributes soared. Hashtags dominated Johnson Directive. 7 minutes. Respect takes flight. Artists drew murals of Malik in his seat. Calm against the storm. Memes spread, not mocking but celebrating. Even Jenna, the flight attendant who had hesitated but not acted, spoke publicly. In training sessions, her voice shook as she admitted, I failed to protect him, but his calm reminded me what my job truly is. To serve with respect. From now on, I will. Communities felt the ripple. In neighborhoods where kids had never imagined flying first class, posters appeared. Malik in 2A, hoodie neat, eyes steady. The caption read, belonging is not granted. It's claimed. The teenager who live-streamed the event became an unlikely symbol too. Interviewed by networks, she said, I thought I was just filming a fight, but I was filming history. Mic drop beat. At one school assembly, a child pointed at the projection of Malik's calm face and said, he made space for me in the sky. Weeks later, the frenzy dimmed into permanence. The Johnson Directive wasn't a headline anymore, it was a habit. Crews trained under its rules, pilots respected it as law, and passengers felt its weight as protection. In his grandmother's living room, Malik sat with her on the old sofa, the TV muted as news anchors still replayed his story. She clasped his hand tightly. Baby, you carried my words into the world. You didn't just keep your seat, you gave a seat to so many others. Malik smiled faintly, the corners of his mouth tilting. It wasn't me, it was us. You gave me the strength to sit still. She kissed his forehead, whispering, your stillness shook the sky. In his notebook, Malik scribbled lines late into the night, authority without humility is turbulence. Respect is the runway. Correction is the landing. Those words, scrawled in youthful handwriting, would one day hang in airline boardrooms, quoted in speeches, taught in leadership classes. At the airport fence, Children pressed their hands to the chain link as planes lifted into the sky. One boy whispered, "That's his plane." Another added, "No, that's our plane." The world hadn't been remade overnight. Prejudice still lurked. Arrogance still tried to climb. But it had been shown in 7 minutes flat that dignity could ground anything. Malik didn't seek fame. He didn't chase headlines. He returned to school, to homework and basketball courts. But everywhere he went, strangers nodded in respect, whispered thank yous. He carried them with quiet grace. Final mic drop beat of the emotional close. Standing at the airport fence with his grandmother, Malik pointed at a plane rising into the clouds. "Respect flies now," he whispered. And for the first time, the sky felt like home.